Okay, so welcome everybody, and like this is like the second part of the introduction to soundscaping, whatever that is. Uh, and first of all, thank you that there are so many people that are returning. And today I want to focus on some like really mostly practical stuff. I will share the editing software of my the screen of my editing software for my Line 6 Helix pedalboard. And we're going to use that to demonstrate how to set up various effects chains and what they do, and like some sort of creative process for how to use this to build your initial sound for your compositions. And so I would like to just try. So you guys, you should see when I actually do this, right? You see this now here? The Helix editor software. Okay, fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess, and I hope that most of you have seen either the video of the first session or you were actually there live. So really, I talked a lot about using, like I call that control, like the volume pedal to control things. And really the term that is used when you're programming like MIDI devices, it's called controllers. And I only have one volume pedal here on the Helix, and that's all I'm going to use. And you'll see what we can do with that. There are like very, very interesting things. So I'm going to keep this whole thing like very open and creative, and we're going to see what we can come up with together. So at any point, like I encourage everybody, or if you have something you want to say, or something you want me to try, let's try to make this more interactive. We're only 36 people, so it's not as big as the last couple times, which is nice. So let's just start with. Does anybody still have any questions from last time, or any remarks, or any wishes for today?
I liked what you offered about suggestions as far as when you're doing soundscapes to use single notes in your loops, and avoiding chords, for example, until you feel a little more comfortable or maybe more experienced with them. So those kinds of tips I really like to take home with me.
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's actually related to the sound that you're using. Because like, for example, if you're using pitch shifters, and most pitch shifters, they don't do well with polyphonic material. So playing chord into a pitch shifter will give you like artifacts, and which can be nice, but which can also be nasty. So so then you would say, okay, I'm only going to play monophonically when I'm using the sound with the pitch shifter. But when I'm using the sound without the pitch shifter, then I can play chords, right? So stuff like that. It's kind of like easy, but we'll talk about that as we build something. So right now I have like this guitar here. It's very plain U8 guitar. I mean, it doesn't look plain, but it's very plain. It's passive. It has just one pickup and volume control and tone control, and it goes through the Helix, and you'll hear the sound kind of late, I guess, like later than when I play it, but that shouldn't be so much a concern for what we're doing today. And so here on the screen that I'm sharing, you see that I have this software here, where on the left side you have presets, and these are just like really presets that are in the box. And I have created this patch called Living the Dream 12 empty. Okay, and you see there's nothing in here. So so as I said last time, like you can see and use effects in two different ways. This just like for like a mental an analogy. Like you can have something you can have an effect that actually makes the sound, and you can use an effect so that you place the sound in an environment. So for example, you could use a delay to lengthen a note, which means you're actually working on the sound itself, or you could use the delay to place a sound in the context of other sounds. So what we're trying to do here for the beginning is just start out simply building a sound. Yeah, we have like 90 minutes, and I'm sure we're getting into more than that. But so very simply, so you see, like here, I can add these blocks, and here we have like the famous, what I say, like the volume pedal. Okay, so for now here, I choose the monophonic volume pedal, and it's now placed here. I can move this around. Okay. So some of you are already Helix users, and this is probably not going to be so interesting, but I usually use the logarithmic setting, and if I just like move my foot here, you see it kind of jumps on screen. It's not really very smooth, and that's one of the problems of these digital devices, really, that this still doesn't work as well as an analog volume pedal. You know, if I had a choice, I would always use an analog volume pedal. But with these digital devices, it's you'll see there are some amazing things you can do that you couldn't do with a controller pedal, which this actually is. It's not a real volume pedal. It's a pedal that generates this data that then is being sent to this block, which turns this into a fader, basically. So all the way up, all the way down. Okay, and I'm not going to do anything really fancy with the volume pedal, rather than like fading in and out today.
I have a quick question, Mark.
Yes, please.
Since I'm new to Helix, you placed the icon of the volume pedal at a certain point on this line, and the reason for that, I hope that isn't a dumb question, but the reasoning behind that, like,
it's so far we only have this one block, so it could be anywhere. Okay?
And you can add blocks around it.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
And you can see I can also drag it to some other place and then add something here in front.
So this is more like an effects chain on a pedal board.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Like you can build most of the things that we do here with any combination of pedals. Or you can build it in a digital device. Like there is a digital version, or like a plug-in version of Helix, for example.
So my question for you that you can go over in the next 90 minutes would be, are there rules in the digital realm of where effects should be placed, or are they like the analog version where it's really up to the performer to experiment with placement?
Yeah. This is one of the main points we're going to be talking about. So you hear now like this plain guitar tone, which I'm just fading in with the volume pedal and fading it out also. So it's like the plainest it gets, just the guitar and the volume pedal. So what should we add here? Should we add a delay? Should we add like maybe a compressor, or any ideas, or reverb?
Reverb, delay, and distortion.
Okay, no distortion for now. Okay. Then we'll add just what's called, like, let's just say like a vintage digital delay. Oops, that was my mistake. Go back here. Volume pedal. You see, no, I already made this mistake. Anyway, so here is the delay, and we put it after the volume pedal. Okay, so you see, with like the way that the delay works, it's basically just taking a copy of the sound and plays it back, like here, 600 milliseconds later. Okay, so what that means is, like, if the mix of the delay is at 100%, you shouldn't be noticing any difference other than that it comes later. So now if I put this to 50%, that means we have 50% of the original and 50% of the delayed signal. So now we should be getting like the note is fading in. So now that because I'm fading them in, so now I just, you hear that? So now when I pluck the note, you actually hear the delay. But if I'm fading it in, because I'm fading it in kind of like in time with the delay. So it only sounds, we don't even hear the repeat, right? So what that means is that if we put the feedback literally means feedback. There's a signal at the end of the delays being put back into the beginning. This means that we can create a note that's rather long. And we can actually hear the oscillation. And if we go higher, and you see this can get like, you see, it's like endless now. Yeah. So now any note, so this is something extremely basic. Okay, so what I just did there is I killed the delay by just turning it down to 0 for a moment. Okay, so you see, with this combination of volume pedal going into a delay, you can already do a lot of things. So for the moment, we're going to use monophonic effects. Okay, but at any point in this presentation, we can also talk about going stereo at some point. Okay, so this would be basically, now we could use this delay to lengthen the sound that we play. So what I personally like, because it's just a plain signal coming from the instrument, there's no preamplification or anything. What I would like to do is I would like to take, let's say, a compressor, yeah, and put this in front. Now the sound is already a little louder, if you can hear that. And also a little thicker. So I can give a little bit more of gain here even. So that to me this makes a big difference. I'm not sure if you're hearing this well, but it basically just bringing up the level and evening out the peaks. And the good thing about Helix is you can basically take any of these and they work. They're kind of nice. So we don't even have to tweak the settings right now. Okay. So now like the question would be like, how do we turn this, you know, we want to stay like rather simple. So how do we turn this into something that is kind of like more exciting? Any ideas? What could we do?
Definitely a reverb.
Reverb?
Yeah.
Any
plate?
Nice plate. Okay.
Can you have an option, Markus, where you can choose if you play notes with a very slow attack or notes with a very dry attack at the same time? Because you are building your design for notes to be played with a very smooth attack.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's like if I play like this is with the volume pedal up, right? So then hear this, right? But I usually build the sounds so that both works, right? But sometimes you want to build just a sound that's just for fading stuff in, yeah. I mean, we'll get into, like, for example, we could also do something like this. We could place the delay in front of the volume. Okay, so let's see what happens now. So so now I'm playing a note and I'm fading in and fading back out. So now I'm fading the sound that actually has an attack in and out. Yeah. Because it's behind the delay. So, but this could be cool because now we could say, okay, like maybe we like this. Maybe now we discovered something cool. Now let's say, okay, let's just put a second delay after the volume pedal now, and we could even use the same vintage digital, right? So, and we give it a like slightly different delay time. Let's make it a little longer, maybe, you know, something like this. And, you know, now I'm fading this note in. So you see what's happening now is because the delay repeats the sound not in a fashion that I can really control with my volume pedal. The volume pedal doesn't help us. We will always get the attack coming through. We cannot kind of reshape what is, you know, in the delay as something with attack to not have attack, unless we do a completely different treatment. But just like this, so it wouldn't work. So like for what we want to do initially, we do this. We go back to our setting of volume pedal into delay, and now we
except if you have two volume pedals.
Yes and no. Yes and no. We'll get into that later. That's a really a different world, but we'll look into that too. See? Okay, so now let's get back to, and we add a plate here, so a reverb, and should we do like something like this? Okay, now this is a stereo effect. So now it's getting nice already.
Markus, how are you achieving that panning effect that I'm hearing? It's very subtle, but it's moving.
It's the plate, it's the reverb that is stereo that introduces.
Wow.
Introduces
I love that.
this. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So you see, all we did is we put some reverb here, and it like makes the sounds sing, let's say, right, and inspirational to play with. And this is something we can take advantage of. So now what I'm hearing here is that, okay, we're trying to like control the dynamics a little bit on the input signal. Then we use the volume control to put our own envelope on top of what I'm playing. Then we're using the delay to kind of smear the sound a little bit. Then we go into a reverb that gives us this sound that you just heard. So, but what I realized or noticed as I was playing was that it wasn't, you know, like dynamically it was just jumping around a little bit too much, because also like when we put something into, you know, like something is being repeated with the delay effect, you kind of introduce new dynamics, right? So then we could say, okay, let's just put another compressor here, right? So now the sound should even be smoother. It gets also much grainier. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can hear that. It gets louder and grainier. So now it was a little bit too loud for me, so I would just turn the gain down a little bit, and also a little bit on the level. Okay. So let's take the delay off here. So now reverb, okay? Reverb. Also we have mix. So now we could go all the way to 100% and see what that sounds like. Now the delay is off and the reverb is 100%. Yeah, kind of nice. So now if we bring the delay back. So this is, you see, this is already all you really need in order to have like a good basic sound. Yeah. So any suggestions, any ideas before I continue?
Craig had mentioned in the chat to add chorusing somewhere.
Yes, very good idea, very good point. Craig, where would we want to add that? At which point in the chain? Does Craig have a microphone? Do we know?
Craig just said after the delay.
Okay.
Put it in the chat.
Yeah, great. Okay, let's do that. So kind of.
What are your recommendations, Markus? Again, being that it's really up to the individual to experiment, but do you see advantages over placing it before or after?
So Henry, the reason why we're doing this is that I want to kind of give you all the opportunity to understand where you want to put it and which kind of result you will be getting if you putting it before or after the delay. So, you know, that's why I'm kind of like always demonstrating what any combination sounds like. So now you can see the modulation. So the chorus is after the delay. That means that the sound that's already being layered by the delay is being modulated and has the chorus effect on it. So then the modulation works sort of as something that bakes, for lack of a better term, bakes the delays together. You know, it sort of like creates glue because it's acting on what is in the delay. If it's sitting before, then we basically simply repeat a chorus sound. See, it's not the same thing. So let me just show you again. So I'm playing on low E here. Now we have this chorus effect, and it's behind. And it actually sounds very nice, but now let's kind of dial back on the reverb here and go to something like 50%. So that also means, because this is a modulation effect that does act on this, we have like certain, like the chorus rate, which and like vibrato rate in this case here, which is independent of the length or the length of the delay setting that we have here. So that means that even though something may repeat here, it gets fed through this, and then a different cycle of timing modulation or timing manipulation is working here. So that means the sound will get more complex, and like a second layer of modulation is put after the delay. So if I put it in front, let's see if we can hear a difference or not. It's much more static. You hear that? It's much more static. So once the note is in the delay, it just repeats as a static note. But if we reverse the order, now we get the modulation after the delay, and it's much richer. Was that a good explanation, Henry?
Sorry, I was zoning out on what you just played.
Okay,
yes.
Okay, so Craig, that was a great idea with the chorus. So what else? What should we do next?
Pitch shifter.
Okay. Okay, pitch shifter. So just take maybe a stereophonic one. Which one? Simple pitch. Here we go. Okay. So here it's +7 half steps. That's a 5th interval. No delay on it. 50% mix. Okay. So let's just hear what that sounds like. Now those were single notes, and they are now being turned into intervals, 2 notes playing at the same time, right?
But Markus, these effects, you plan to control each one of them with a pedal, or are they fixed and their setup or settings are fixed?
At the moment they're fixed.
Okay.
Yes. But obviously, yes, you're right. You could control them. But like I said, for today's session, I only have this one pedal, and we want to see what we can do with this one pedal, right? Because if we use if we use it to control the volume, yeah, we may for now use it for the volume and something that's kind of related to what the volume pedal controls, or the the expression pedal that controls the volume controls. And if we tie that to the pitch, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So
I was thinking wah-wah or something like that.
It's possible, but it's like wah-wah or something is not really very useful for what we're working on at the moment, where we're working on something like a basic sound to build like backdrops, let's say, for playing, right? So I mean, having said that, it's not useful. I mean, obviously you can do it, and there are great sounds you can get from that. But for now, let's just see what. So here we have our pitch shifter. Now we have this chain already of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks here. So where would we really want to have the pitch shifter? I mean, it sounded fine here, right? After the reverb. Well, we could try it. Let's just be experimentally and see what happens if we put the reverb back to 100% mix. So now we get like the reverb, only the reverb, not the direct signal, to go into the pitch shifter, and it's a 5th interval is being added. So let me just play a low E again. So we're hearing the 5th interval. It actually sounds great. It's kind of like it sounds really nice here in the helix.
You're getting the orchestral sound I was hoping for. That
yes.
Sounds like that beginning of a movement of a symphony, you know?
Yeah, just the 5th interval, right? But it's kind of nice. But now you hear that there's some glitching happening, like some strange artifacts. This is because the delay now holds more than 1 note. Let me just play like 2 notes. And I can hear that the pitch shifter can't really deal with that very well. If I play a chord, it gets kind of like really nasty. But I like that, and I use that a lot sometimes, but it gets kind of microtonal. Okay, so now, like, my choice would be to place the pitch shifter before the reverb. So now then, because now the reverb would smooth out this microtonal, these microtonal artifacts we're getting. Okay, so now let's see. I play another chord. Hear that? So and keeping this sort of thinking, we can say, okay, no, in which case let's also move the chorus behind the pitch shifter. So now the pitch shifter signal will be, chorused, and then we get 100% reverb on it. Now it gets even smoother. just one note. Okay. So now this was the interval of a fifth, which is pretty consonant. Okay. So like the most consonant interval, let's say, is an octave. So we can put this like an octave up. So it's going to sound like this. Okay, so alternatively, we could say, okay, we want pitch shifter to go down rather than up, and we can go down an octave here, which is nice too, right? So with our delay here, going at lots of feedback. Okay, one note here. So now the delay is very noticeable. So usually I wouldn't do anything like this. I would maybe, you know, have the delay like this. See, it's really easy to do these things. So what I'm surprised about myself whenever I work like this is, like, if I just remind myself of what the pure guitar signal sounded like. This was nothing like this, right? Like suddenly there's like some sort of grandness to it, right? Which I guess comes down to like the compression, and then also the reverb plays a big role in that. So
you actually achieved Richard Strauss meets Ligeti at one moment there. You actually had both things happening. When you were messing with the settings, you kind of got this really interesting...
Yeah. When they changed the delay time.
Lunar landscape.
So the cool thing is nowadays that that these digital delay effects, they mimic the behavior of analog delays, and that's why we can do something like this. That we can, you know, we can change the delay time and not get clicking, like in the mid '90s, like on the GD5 or something. Whenever you like modulated the delay time, you got clicking, which was also nice for certain effects, but see. So which kind of order should we settle on? Anybody has an opinion here for pitch, modulation, and reverb?
Yeah, I would argue for putting the pitch as the very first thing, because the pitch shifter relies on a clean and loud signal to properly interpret the input, and so that way you're getting an accurate pitch shift before you change the volume, and also before you're trying to pitch shift echoes.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And here, so this is a question of like, you need to decide what you want. Like here in our case, we have the possibility to use multiple pitch shifters. Okay, so why not take another one and put it here? Okay, for now we can mute it. So so here now it's in the first place. So you said you want a loud one, also a loud signal. So why don't we put it after the compressor then? Okay, so let's see what happens now. So now, yes, nice. So now we notice we have a really stable low octave. This was a great remark. See, so it's really nice, very clean. Yeah, very nice. So, but we can have both. Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make. Like we can still have the one here. Okay, now we need to make this stereo. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So now we have both. We have the clean octave down here, -12 half steps, going, you know, before the volume. We fade the volume into the delay. We compress that again, then we modulate it with the chorus. Then we have the reverb, which is set to 100% still. Let's just do a little bit less maybe. And then we have a pitch shifter here at the end that adds a fifth interval. So I'll just play. So now this gives us kind of like a beautiful orchestral effect. It's actually quite nice. Huh? I mean, this Helix thing is actually it still inspires me. I haven't really like from the mid-90s till about maybe 2010 or so, I was very much into doing this stuff and programming and having like a great setup and something that I would take to recording sessions and gigs, and it would always be the same setup. Nowadays, I usually always start from zero when I go to a recording session, try to set up something different every time. And I don't really get into programming detailed things that much anymore, which is just that because my whole approach has changed quite a bit. But it's actually nice. And you know, see, now I moved the pitch shifter before the reverb again, and let's see kind of what this sounds like. Nice, but a little bit too much for me. Yeah, let's take the low octave off. You see, like this sound, it also still works for chords, but we get a little bit of that extra glitchiness from the pitch shifter here. But I quite like it. Yeah. So now we're getting to the. Let me see, what time is it? Okay. So now the next stage would be, so we're controlling only the volume with the expression pedal at the moment. The cool thing is that you can, we can also assign, or we could assign, you know, some other things here. So for example, we could put let's just do something crazy. Could say like the delay time would go on pedal 2, which is the same as the volume pedal. Now this is we don't actually hear much. Yeah, we hear it, but it's very low frequency because it goes all the way up to 8 seconds here when I raise the volume. So what we could do is here is so here we have the volume. You see here is like minimum is 0% volume and max position is 100. So we could also say we only want the volume really never to go to 0 and could go to 12% or something, but that doesn't really make sense. But here with a simple delay, for example, maybe what we want to do is we want to say, okay, we don't want this to go up to 8 seconds. We just want to say want to go to something like 1.3 seconds, and the minimum time should be something like 800 like this. So now, if we go back here, we'll see that if I raise the volume pedal, it only goes to 1.3. And I turn it back down and we get this artifact. So now I'm only giving us 100% of this here.
Yeah, but that sounds like wind. That's beautiful. It sounds like a wind coming in.
Just we're modulating the delay time with the pedal. So that gives us like kind of unpredictable but it's again, it's kind of quite nice. We can also kind of like maybe take the reverb on the pitch shifter off for now. So now we hear what it really does. It gives us these crazy sounds. You hear that? So now this is really what is coming out of the delay, and we can even take the modulation of that gets super glitchy.
Yeah, it's almost a bit crusher kind of effect.
Yeah. So personally, I don't use this kind of sound anymore. But yeah, you can do something crazy like that. But now let me show you what would be kind of like more interesting. Let's go back here to this and say we want to say none, so that we're not modulating the delay time anymore. But what we may want to do is, let's say we want to take the feedback, and okay, what we want to do here, feedback, I want to say that when the heel is down, we want it to have 100% feedback, and when the heel is up, we want it to have, say, something like 25%, okay? So what may this do now? Let's just see. Let me just bring the reverb back here. Just a second. Do less of the reverb. So now what happens is when I fade the sound in and now faded it out, and the volume pedal is all the way down, and what happens is that when the volume pedal is all the way, I mean the heel is down, which for me is like the sound is off, feedback is at 100%. So this is how I get these endless sustaining sounds. Right? So we're still only using one expression pedal. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is boring because you don't see what I'm doing, but like, you know, I can just play anything into the piano and then fade it out, and we get the 100% feedback, so this sound kind of stays. So now this is obviously kind of like tied to the delay time. So if we make this shorter, I'll just play something. So this is really getting very interactive, where, you know, the way that I move the volume pedal actually has an influence on the effect that I'm getting. So if I'm fading it out slowly, I hardly get any effect. But if I the quicker I fade out, the more feedback I'm getting. Hear that? So, and I really don't even need to play. I just bring the volume back up to delete the buffer. Does this make sense? I'm sure some of you have questions.
So my question is, how is it not blowing up when the feedback's at 100%? Is that just a Helix peculiarity, or?
Yeah, I guess 100% is maybe not the correct number, really. But what it means, it's because it's not getting any new information at that point, right? It's basically just repeating that sound that's in the buffer. Right?
But it's not. This repeats.
Yeah, I couldn't explain that to you how they have programmed it, but it's certainly not a real audio feedback. Right? Because if you are absolutely right, if it was an audio feedback, it wouldn't sound like this.
I think it's also somewhat dependent on the model, Marcus.
Yeah, exactly.
Some models, I think, like if you do the Bucket Brigade, which is their analog version,
yes.
I think it will go into self-oscillation, but I think it just depends on which of the delays you've chosen to work with.
Exactly. And like here, I use the simple delay just to go for like the most basic effect we can get, really. Yeah, but this is kind of like in a way a little bit of like a magical trick. Like so we're tying the feedback to the volume pedal, and we get the sound to react to how quickly we're fading in and fading the sound out. We get different kinds of tails.
Markus, if you want to tie your effect not to a volume pedal, but to the sound itself. For example, you're a trumpet player or you're a flute player, and you want to play the flute or the trumpet with a strong or low or a singer, and then you want the effects to react, just like if you are using a volume pedal, but with your blow, with the way you blow.
Yeah, it's what envelope followers do, which is basically a device that kind of like creates an envelope from a sound that you put into it. Okay. And that is like something what a wah-wah, like an auto wah-wah does, right? In a little, in a way. So it kind of reacts to the dynamics of the playing, and something like that can be useful. I myself haven't really found it to be that useful, I have to say, because I as I said before, I find that my focus is on trying to get things to be clean and controllable rather than not so controllable. I'm just I mean, obviously I also do uncontrollable things, but like for this introduction that we're talking about, we want to be able to control these things. And an envelope follower is, for example, like when you're on a stage, it will react completely differently to when you're at home. Like when you're in a quiet room and you're using the trumpet with microphone A. You go on a stage, you use a different microphone. Things will be completely different, and you could also potentially have quite interesting feedback problems that way. So anyway, just I think it's like for my guitar playing, I don't use that kind of thing.
So you mean if somebody's doing what you are doing with his voice, he has to use a volume pedal the same to be able to control things?
Yeah, or an expression pedal, right? Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. But when we're talking about acoustic instruments, then it's again something completely different, because you cannot really mute the acoustic instrument. You know what I mean? Like with an electric instrument, there's like you are probably hearing me plucking here, but with a trumpet, it's very, very hard to make that the direct sound not be part of what is being heard by the audience, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So you see what I just did is I moved the reverb in front of the delay. So we haven't done that yet, right? Okay, so let's see what happens here now. And I still have this the feedback set up here. So now what happens is that the sound is monophonic again. You hear that? So it's because the delay shows is monophonic. So now we've moved a stereo effect before a monophonic effect, which means it's back to mono. So we can change this to stereo. Let's see if this works. If it's taken the it has not taken the controller information. This is also monophonic. So I'll go stereo here. Do you hear this still being mono? Right? so now another parameter which is worth looking into controlling with the expression pedal is the mix of the delay. Okay, so let's choose both here. So now we see if now they're tied together, but we can also say we want to have 100% here, so maybe 50% here, and for the mix, we want the mix to be, say, 100% when it's down and only at 20% when it's up. Does anybody know if I can get rid of the control panel of Zoom while I'm working on this Helix editor?
I don't think you can, Marcus.
It's annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it just means I have to wait occasionally here. Okay, so you see now the volume pedal is down and we get the repeated note here. So it's really basic. So now let's say with Helix we have so much processing power. Now we can put even more processing behind. I'm just going to take this off. Yeah, nice. So let's say we don't want the pitch shifter here, we want the reverb here, we have this delay here. Let's say we want to put, an extra delay after our reverb. Let's do something a little different here, maybe like a reverse delay. So again, you see, like we just put one extra block here at the end, and it sounds again kind of like very different, and it's very responsive also. Actually, even gets a little bit too loud for my taste. Now we've turned the chorus into stereo chorus. Now we get like even more dimension here. Stereo field. Now it sounds like this. Enjoy so much is the mix here. Let's try it the other way around.
So you put your feedback, your max feedback when your volume is max, no?
No, when the volume is down, when it's off. Yes.
The other way around.
Yeah. So that way you can basically create a tail, and that means if you're fading something new into the delay, it will replace what was in the delay before. So that way you can kind of like play chord progressions into a delay without the tails overlapping too much. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah. I'll take this off again. So now what the reverse delay does here at the end is kind of strange and a little awkward, because we're creating a tail with our reverb, and then the delay, the reverse delay, plays it backwards, which means that it sounds as if the reverb is being cut off. Yeah, which can be interesting, can also be annoying. Like, yeah, but in a case like this, maybe if to make it less annoying, we could say, let's just put another reverb. And now this is a super complex reverb that also adds pitch shifting. So now you see, this is like, I'm not playing. The volume pedal is like in the off position, heel down position, and we're hearing sound, right? So now we can kind of sculpt the sound, and we can. So any ideas what we could put before or after the reverb here? Any suggestions? Let's just.
Maybe tremolo.
Okay.
Very slight trim.
Which one would you suggest? This one just here, the tremolo?
That or the optical. Either one of those is quite good.
Okay. Yeah, so now here, the reverb. You should be hearing this. It should be stereo. Yeah.
Markus, do you have a spinning Leslie effect somewhere on there?
Yeah, I think so. But like, let's just here use this tremolo. Here now it's kind of stereo, okay. And you can speed it up and slow it down. So in this case, I think I would probably prefer something slower, and then make it more intense. Put the reverb back. Getting like a really interesting mix now. The reverb tail and the modulated signal going into it. So here's what goes into the reverb. This is what comes out of the reverb. And here we can mix it. So again, like this, the note that we're hearing is sitting in the delay, because the feedback is at 100% when the heel is down on the expression pedal. And when the heel is down on the expression pedal, that also means that the volume is off, going into the delay. It's kind of nice. Yeah, it's just one note, so let me just replace that note.
So this would be the basic sound that you enter into the loops after that you build with Ableton?
Well, right now we've already gone beyond that in a way, okay? So, but what you would do once you kind of create a chain like this, or which could even be, more pedals, then you start making your, your pedal combinations that give you like specific sounds. So you would create one that would only give you a clean sound that you like. For example, let's try. Let's turn the delay off. Let's turn the verb at the end off. Let's turn the tremolo off. Let's keep the chorus. Let's keep the reverb. Let's turn up the reverse delay. And yeah, so now like you could just. Okay, so this would be a clean sound, but then I wouldn't want it to be so wet, so I would give it less reverb. Right? So everything is here. Like it's just a matter of combining different settings. Right? So we could say, okay, let's bring the pitch shifter in, and I want the pitch shifter with the low octave. Yeah. So here you would have your like one more sound, right? So then we can do these with the reverse delay. So any combination will give you kind of like a different sound. You could also go for something that's super clean. Clean as in like just the pure guitar. Then you could try, okay, what does the pure guitar, or just like with the compression here, sound like through that reverb we put at the end? Quite nice. So we have the tremolo that sits in front right now. Gives us this amazing movement. Oh, we could also try this. But what kind of happens is, like, remember when I said at the beginning, sometimes the sound feels like it's actually shaping the sound, and at other times you're using an effect to place a sound in a space, and this kind of happens if the modulation is before we get the effect of the modulated sound sitting in the space, and obviously if we put it behind, the space is getting sort of destroyed. It's being modulated here, and we can then, if we want to be, you know, that way, we can say, let's just put something crazy on it, like a harmony delay. Let's see what this does. So this is obviously that's getting. This is the kind of sound I would hardly ever use. So like the simpler the better in a way. But again, like now we have this complex sound here. It was the complex treatment of the delay after the reverb and the modulation, and it felt kind of like, I don't know, not very elegant. So let's put it in front and see what happens. That's a little bit better, but then yeah, this would be too much. We can do this. Now it's distorting here. Something too loud here at the end. Turn this down. So like the gain staging is also important. Like we haven't like looked into that at all here. But basically, you know, the more effects you're adding, the louder the signal will potentially get, and you need to make sure that you're looking at the levels that are being output here at the end. So yeah, really, I mean, this is about it. I mean, like I said, the simpler the better. So what I usually use is just a combination like reverb, maybe modulation, a delay, dynamics, maybe at the front and after the delay, but we can also take that away here. The delay usually is kind of mixed in very low, but this is automated now, so it's not going to take if I change it here. Pitch shifter, I do use occasionally to get like really low sounds. Like, for example, I mean, this is something I should even show you. Like you could even do something like, I'll go minus 2 octaves right here, and we could say, let's put the mix to 100%. And what we'll get now will be like really low. And I'm just playing like here the like middle C or middle E, which becomes this low. And we can compress it a little bit here. Yeah. And if I'm playing it just in the like the low E string on the guitar, it's already too low for it to actually sound like an E. But this is useful to create sub-bass stuff. But maybe you noticed, like at the very beginning when I played like some low notes, it was already like extremely full. Like usually you don't need to do tricks like this. It's just the question, like this is something we haven't looked into yet, so let's do that. So let's take this away and use an equalizer. So what can we do with an equalizer? Okay, let's just say low and high cut, for example. Let's just move this here in the front. So this can give us quite interesting effects if we say we want to cut like maybe even something like this far down and something like around here. Let me just make sure we not have too much on here. Okay. So now this low E sounds like this. Right? So, but it's kind of interesting. If it sounds like this, if you're thinning it out, then adding the pitch shifter, let's say like the octave down, again it gets cleaner. Yeah. So this is another trick. Like sometimes if you want to add a low frequencies to a sound, you may want to cut the low frequencies first and then add a pitch shifter. Yeah, so again, that sounds super plain. Let's put this back on here. Go back to 0 here. Yeah. So now the quality of the initial sound here is completely different. Kind of like nasally, a little more metallic, and this is like a great tool to also shape. The initial, how should I say, the initial spectrum that the sound will fill when you're building soundscapes. Okay, so I usually have like 3 different sounds where one is full range, one is kind of like mid-rangey, and one is sort of like high pitched. So I could decide to, from the get-go, to use a sound that only goes in a certain range in the spectrum, if that makes any sense right now. So let's see what happens. So let's try to bring these effects back here. Yeah, delay is back. See, and now all we have is like a thinner sound going into it. So let me try something here. Feedback. So because the feedback, like the way it reacts is that maybe you can do something like it could be 90%, could be like the minimum setting, which is called max here because it's reversed on the volume pedal, and then 100% when it's down. So So. You hear that? This high frequency modulating there. And the reason why we're getting this now is because we have changed the frequency range of the initial sound. Let's try something like this. Hear that? Yeah, so now we're hearing overtones, that we're creating overtones that I didn't play and that haven't been created by a pitch shifter. Yeah, so this is, I mean, this really, I don't want to say this is advanced stuff because it's not, but it's something you can only figure out if you try. You need to try around. And basically it's the, well, let me take this one off, sorry. It's really annoying that I always have to wait to get here, so. Okay, so if we take this off. So this is kind of like interesting. If we listen for the original, which is the delay now, which is this, okay? And so I always recommend that you kind of like sweep, in a way, through the mix control and to find out at which point, so only now do I hear the reverb getting louder, and now it's like slowly starting to overtake initial sound. And here, now it's clearly louder, but you can still hear the pulsing of the delay, right? Even at 86%. Dun, 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 almost like this. Dun, 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 dun. And still at 100%, you know it's there, because the reverb doesn't smear it completely. And here also the decay time comes into play. So make this much longer. Now you hear that the overtones that the plate reverb brings out, like which is an octave here, it's the fifth also. Yeah, it's the fifth. So then, I mean, it's really endless. You can also low cut and high cut the reverb. So again, now the sound is again inhabiting a different space. Now this is really a crazy effect, and really this one, you probably only want to have something like this in there. Let's take this one off. So now if you listen closely, maybe we put this one to 100%. Now we can try here to change the pitch settings here, so you can hear like a low octave here, which is this slider. And we can change this. Here's our tritone. Also do the same here on the second pitch, rather than that being an octave. Now it's also tritone here. So again, I wouldn't probably use anything like this for source sound, but we can already play a composition simply by dragging the sliders around. So let's put this to 0. Put this one to 0. So now you can see, rather than using like these controls that go up in half steps, you could just detune sense. So that would give you a much subtler detuning, but you could also do, if you go 50, that's a quarter tone. You go quarter tone up there, quarter tone down here. So now we're hearing the original pitch, we're hearing 50 cents below and 50 cents above. Pitch mix, we can turn this up also to 100%. So this is good for experimental sounds, obviously. Like for a subtle effect, just something that's like slightly out of tune. So, and I encourage everybody to do this kind of work and listen to the results you get. Like here now, I can hear like maybe 5 or 6 different overtones now. Let me just play again, just our low E. Now with the low octave. Again, like the other effects, they react completely differently now that there is the low octave in there. Kind of fascinating. I took the EQ off now, completely off. take this one away.
You're getting some interesting upper frequencies there.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say overtones, right? Okay, let's start some more of a question and answer to finish this.
This seems to be an interesting way of getting into, and also a fairly, I don't want to say easy, well, a somewhat easy way to get into microtones using this process, no?
Yeah.
You know, something I raised in a previous conversation, we were discussing the merits of microtonal music, but you were kind of doing that here.
Yeah, I mean, even on my very first album, Taster, I did quarter note, like some compositions in quarter notes. And it's very easy to do with digital gear now, because you could simply set your pitch shifter to take your signal up 50 cents. And you could play the notes right in between the 12 chromatic steps that we usually use. And yeah, I mean, like you can do all sorts of things, and especially pitch shifters, which are beautiful because they glitch a lot when you hit them with a very complex signal. So like the opposite of what we did before, when we said, okay, let's put it in the first position in the chain to get a really clean pitch shifting effect. You can put it in any other position and kind of abuse it to create interesting overtones, interesting unexpected intervals that are being mixed into your signal. Exactly.
You created a lot of different, very exciting sounds, Markus. What would be interesting, or maybe at a later stage, is to understand how you navigate into those different settings, because you don't just do that with a mouse. I suppose you do that instantly in a way when you play, when you auto compose or you compose during your performance, by navigating into the different setups.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I do navigate with the mouse most of the time. Okay. As a matter of fact, and like this is just the side that's happening in the Helix pedal board, right? So on top of that, I always have this Ableton Live, which does a lot more, right? And I also operate this with the mouse and like a little like a control, like a little MIDI controller. But really with the basic sounds that I'm using here, and that's why I demonstrated to you that you get a different sounds by muting or you know, muting certain effects, right? That's how you kind of like go back and forth between different presets within a chain, let's say.
No, but it's always the same story. It's very nice to hear all these things, but you need a lot of work to understand each one of them and understand what it's going to produce before you action it, so that when you play, you know where you're going, or you have a feel of where you're going at least. Yes,
but I'm not of the opinion that you need to know before you try. I think you should try and learn by doing. And yeah, you're right. But you're right. I mean, you see, like even just doing this with you guys, like we discovered some, I don't want to say like new things, but also some you know, like when we got these overtones, like in this list, like it's the questions like, where do they come from? And really you can only experience that. The problem is I had my foot on the volume pedal. If, you know, like one of you would have had, you know, or all of you could have had your foot on the volume pedal, and you could like interact with playing one note and like fading it up and fading it down, you would get like more of a sense, if I do like a certain, like a faster fade in, then you can hear those overtones come out. If you do a slower one, you can get that and that. Yep.
Yeah, you could imagine an interactive session like this one, where you play the notes and the participants, each one activate one pedal or one thing to change the sound and make a joint collective improvisation.
Yeah, exactly. You know, this is something I was thinking about for the future with these Living the Dream events. Actually, I would ask participants to set up their DAWs, and I would actually send a signal out that people could then work with live. Yeah. Actually, here in, and maybe you've seen it, like the very first entry in the chat window is from me, and it's this Listen to plugin, which is actually active, and it's currently streaming the stuff that I'm doing here to the internet. So you could have like simply taken this, and while I was doing this demonstration, you could have built a piece from that. You could have looped what I played, etc. You know, it's I think it's really exciting, and I would like to try something like that in the future for sure.
Theogenius has a very interesting question in the chat. Is there a rule of thumb? Oops, it moved. Wait a minute. Is there a rule of thumb for devising a lead sound that complements the ambient sounds?
Yeah, it's a good question. We didn't get into that at all today. Lead sound, I think, is something like very personal that I don't think needs to like complement the backdrop by itself. It is like the reverb and the delays that you put on the lead sound that then kind of ties the two together. So I'm not saying that the reverb on the backdrop on the soundscape and the reverb on the lead sound should be the same. Actually, quite could be completely different. But you would really have to dial in and listen like a producer mixing a track, rather than you creating a sound. Does that make sense? I mean, it's really not so much about the initial sound. It's more about how you place it within the sound, and that is kind of like a question of mixing. And this is something that we didn't address here into this format at all.
Markus, that's pretty cool, man, what you're doing. Thanks for the session. I just watched the first session on YouTube actually, and I was very intrigued about on the Ableton session. Just watching all those sands moving all around, and I'm wondering if you were modulating the effects with automation from Ableton into the Helix.
No. This, like I said, I try to keep these two worlds completely separate. Okay. So for example, I also don't want to use the Helix as an audio interface. I want to keep it as a separate device that lives in its own world, and I use actually analog outputs going into the Focusrite audio interface that I have. So the two, like, they should be completely separate. And then I would probably dial in like one of the first sounds we did here tonight, like a very simple sound. And I mean, if you guys still have like maybe 10 minutes, I can show you. So let's just say we want to do like, go back to something rather simple. So you saw that? You saw it? I just turned the delay on, and we got sound because it's still set to 100% feedback. So this is kind of like a feature of the Helix that I used during the Devin Townsend tour last year, where he wanted me to have different loops for different sections of the songs. And so what I did is I set up controllers on the, there are like, I don't know how many, actually 12 buttons that I can hit with my foot on the Helix. And you turn something like this on and off, and you see, it's kind of like a very cool feature. I just got reminded of that. So you see, so now we have this sound sitting here. Now I kill it by simply bringing up the volume pedal. It's fading out now because now it's at 90%. Okay, I can't even like this now. Okay, here we go. So now I'll just play a note here. Much less of this. Sorry. And here we only use something like this. Okay, so. Okay. Let's take the modulation off. the tremolo. Okay, so I would take something like this, and in Ableton, so now usually this master channel that we're hearing stuff through right now, normally I wouldn't even use that. I would just put that to sense only. Nothing we can hear, right? I'll put it back on anyway so that you hear what we're doing. But so here, so now I have, this is actually I think the same setup that I used last time, maybe not. I don't have the MIDI controller set up, so let me just kind of like reset this. Go 100% feedback on both loopers. This one back to 0 transposition here, and so now take this one off. Take this one off.
I can see on the looper tracks that they don't have an input set on those tracks.
No, it's no. Okay, yeah, I know. This is a trick. I'll show you, and this is amazing. I'm going to get into that in detail next time. But basically, what it is, it's that I'm routing everything through the sense, and then sending the sense back to the channel. So it's a very, very simple trick, but it basically gives you the chance to anything that you're sending out here on the sense can actually return back onto the channels. And this is how I work here with the automation. So now you see, like I have these patterns that control the fades here, different kinds of patterns. Okay, you can see, like now it's only fading here. Like let me take the rhythm for example. You see this is kind of like, it's a rhythmic pattern superimposed on these. And then I have something which I call glitch, which is sort of the fade with a few glitches in them. You see this, right? And I can select this pattern of automation independently for each track. Yeah, and it just means that, for example, like looper 1 sits on here. So the output of looper 2 would now kind of get sent to looper 1 in this pattern here, in this fade in and fade out pattern. What is so amazing about Ableton is that here the master, if I turn this down, sets the ceiling of my automation. So you see now it does the same kind of spiel here, but in a much smaller range. Put it back, and it put it back here. Yeah. So now, like nothing is recorded yet into the looper. So let's do this. So we have our basic sound here. So now I'm just putting looper 2 into record. Do the same with looper 1 here.
I still don't quite understand how you pick the loopers. How do you get the signal from?
Yeah, like I said, I'm going into detail next time.
Right.
Yeah, but I'll just demonstrate. I'll just play a little bit here. I'll also. So now I'm just simply recording. Yeah, I'm going to overdub here, and now I can start. Yeah.
What we are hearing now is this the effects coming from the effects on Ableton.
So let me turn what's coming from the pedal off now. So now we're not hearing the pedal at all anymore. Now we're only hearing the loopers.
Right.
Yeah. So and see what we can do here now. We can do something like, yeah, like very simple stuff like this. But if I do this, actually, it may have gotten recorded into the other loop. Let me just do this here. Down here. Ah, you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see this action that I did here, because it's going through the glitch automation, got sent over to this looper a little bit. So, but now the whole thing starts to morph, because looper 1 is also sending its stuff back into looper 2, which is on the send number 2 here on looper send B, going to looper 2. So you see, all I'm doing is we're taking this like this one note loop that was prepared in the pedal board, which we don't even hear anymore now. It's still being fed into the loopers, but I could also stop feeding it into the loopers by turning this down here on the input channel. Okay, so now we have this evolving soundscape here, simply from the static sound now this loop, sorry, it's this control panel that gets in the way sometimes. Sorry, it's annoying. Okay, so here I can also reverse the one that is an octave down here now. So now we're getting like, and I can put it back up an octave and this one back down. And so now we have created like a really complex soundscape already, just out of and so now I could go in and just play a few notes on top, which we're not hearing because it's sense only, right? So I'll put it back to the master channel. Now we hear it. So you know something is happening that I wouldn't really want in practice, which is that we're getting like sounds to feedback, right? This. So this is because of the setting in the pedal boards. Now I can fade that out. But it's already been recorded, so but now it's kind of annoying. It's up there, so what I can do is just pitch it down an octave, and we have this beautiful texture here. So again here, since you have to imagine that the output of each of these channels is being, the output is being routed to something else. You can also treat the sound here, like what I did with the speed or the reverse function of the looper itself. I could also, use here this filtering, for example, that kind of like, and bring this back this way. But these moves, everything I'm doing here is being copied into the other looper that's also running. Putting back everything onto fade now. And you see like these two channels, the verb and pitch, which are set up just to be like, this is reverb and this is a pitch shifter, but with it's like eventide crystals with chorus delay, some rotary, and then reverb at the end. I can also bring these in, so an extra reverb. So now you hear this shimmering effect. That is this pitch thing here. So really, to play on top of this, I would even want to go in and simplify this sound even more. Here. feedback. I wouldn't want this to be 100%. Maybe something like this. The mix, I would tone it down a little bit. And then we can try some pitch shifting. Why not? Let's do an octave up. Why not? Okay, bring this part back in, but only give it. Yeah, and then I would go back here. Kind of a nice and subtle sound. And then I would have like the option to set the feedback of the loopers to 0 with just using a key on the keyboard of the laptop. And you see it would continue to play. So now let's listen to the effect of the fade out via the cross feedback of the loopers, the verb and the pitch. I went from 100% to 0 like in an instant. So it's like, you see, it's making off. But now you see, this is kind of like you can imagine what the tail and the cross feedback is doing by listening to what's left over when the feedback is set to 0.
I got a question.
Oh, please.
Oh, sorry. Markus, how critical is it for you in a live environment that you can give the sound man, like for front of house, a stereo feed? And do you always get that, especially if you don't travel with your own sound guy?
Yeah, I always do that. And usually, like, the funny thing is, like, believe it or not, sound guys are very lazy. So they're actually happy when I just give them a pre-produced signal. Yeah.
In case you don't get a stereo feed, how well does mono work with that sound?
You mean as a feed for my monitoring, or do you mean for the PA?
For the PA.
For the PA, I wouldn't play if it's mono.
Okay.
It doesn't, because it doesn't work. No. That's a very, very good observation. Yeah. Because like I'm using the space in such a way that everything collapses if it's mono. And probably for some of you, it is mono right there. Like, it's fair enough. It's a good point.
And the sound guy, do you know what they do with the stereo feed for front of house? Do they just pen it 50-50 left and right, or do you have special instructions for them?
Yeah, it should be like my left channel should be on the left side of the PA, and my right channel should be on the right side of the PA. And so I'm usually monitoring directly from my system. So I don't even want to go through their desk or anything. So I have in-ears. Like today, I'm not using in-ears, but like usually I use in-ears, and I hear exactly what I do. It's very important that I can kind of like in a performance situation get into a deep trance and focus on what I'm doing, and I'm trying to kind of like hear everything, every little detail. And that usually does, well, it hardly ever works in a situation where I have to rely on somebody else, really. And it's like the shortest path is the best. And even with the stereo signal, things can be done wrong. Like, you know, when I'm playing with Stickman, I usually send out the looping stuff, like what you guys just heard, and the direct signal of the pedal board separately. That means that Robert Fraser, who is mixing Stickman, he has control over what he uses, which can be like really scary sometimes, because sometimes I'm not sure if he's even seeing that I'm sending him an extra treatment from the laptop or something like that. But it's also if you are working with the team for a long time, it also is important that you start trusting people, and that you know that they will make the best out of what you give them as material to play with, right? So, but no, I recommend like to always like make sure you can monitor in your own world with in-ears ideally, and then just send out like I mean, I've also done performances in like multi-channel performances. But there I would also control. I would just give the sound engineer, say, 3 stereo pairs, like one for the front speakers, one for the rear, and one for the ones in the middle, or something like that.
And one question: what did you use before you started using Ableton? Did you always have a software component, or early on just hardware?
No, it was hardware. I was using 2 Oberheim Echoplex Digital Pro loopers, which were monophonic, and I used and this may be interesting because you can still get it. It's the Alesis Quarterverb 2, which is an amazing piece of gear, which is, I would say, it's sort of like an Eventide that you could afford. It was released in the mid-90s, I think. And I used that for a long time because you can do this kind of like feedback thing that I do in Ableton. You could do that within the Quarterverb 2. You would have to be creative. You know, you would use rather than having like a fader, you would have to use a panning block, where you would only take the left output of the panning block, and that would turn the panning block into a fader that's automated and stuff like that. But it's a really great device. And then I used like a Lexicon MPX1. But then in early 2001, or I think I started using Ableton. It was like version 1, or like I think maybe version 2 that I started on with Ableton. But for a long time, Ableton wasn't as great as it then started to be once they introduced more plugins, like internal plugins. And then at some point, I started using the Möbius looper, which I think I said in the last session, the Möbius looper within Ableton. And then they started introducing the looper device, this thing here, and that was the, at that point I never had to go back. And once I understood how to use the clip automation, which is the automation that I use here to control these sends, like if I press play again, you see this is clip automation. Once I learned how to use that, I never had to look back, or I never even had to look forward, because basically I could do anything I had ever dreamt about with this setup. And I've been using like a setup like this for, I think, 11 or 12 years now. And it's really like, this is what I'm trying to say. Like when I'm talking to you guys and I show you these things, for me, it sounds like I'm bullshitting most of the time, because for me, these things are so normal, or even, I don't even question, or don't even ask myself any questions about this, what I'm doing. But as it turns out, when I'm actually then starting to perform with this, I realize that there is so much knowledge that I've gained. Well, knowledge may not be the right, but just experience. using a system like this. And it's I have to say, I guess it's almost impossible to transfer that knowledge or that experience, those experiences verbally. It's something you guys just have to start doing yourself. I mean, at the end of this course, you will get my Ableton session also. And like, I mean, I've heard from like at least 5 or 6 people that they have already copied the session, you know, from the screen, trying to get the same effects. But then, you know, this question came up like, what? Well, there's no input actually on the loop. Yeah. And I mean, I answered that, you know, how that works today.
I still don't get it.
It's good because it's really something special. The problem, you know, the thing is that you cannot automate return tracks. Yeah, this is one thing that Ableton doesn't do. So you have to find a way. How do I get the return tracks to get back into the mixer, into the main channels? And that is kind of the answer. And you can very easily do that. You'll figure it out. Yeah. Hey guys, so this was all. Yeah.
What kind of computer do you need to run like Helix and Ableton together? Like what kind of laptop?
You know, up until recently, I had a MacBook Pro from 2012, and everything runs perfectly on that. So I don't know. I'm not really good at giving you any specs of computers, but only in January I got a more current MacBook Pro. But I've been using the one from 2012 for a long time. Actually, the very first time I was on stage with a laptop was I think it was 1st of March 2005. I was opening for Richard Barbieri in London. And that was like an old PC with, I think I tried to use like, what was it called? Like the Native Instruments guitar rig with a looper or something. And obviously it crashed during the show and stuff like that. But we've come such a long way since then. And I think that most modern computers will be able to handle what I'm showing you here. Yeah, and like the HX Edit, like this thing here, it's just the editor software for the pedal board that I actually have on the floor here. But there's also like is it HX Native or Helix Native? It's a plugin which looks exactly like this and which does the same things. So it all can be done in software.
Computers, can you run them on 2 different computers and connect them somehow, interface them? Because I'm thinking 2 cheap computers are faster than one. Of course, yes. New computer.
Of course, yeah. But that's really something that if you are a touring musician, you wouldn't think about something like that. You know, you don't want to travel with more stuff. You know, so it would make more sense to have an extra computer with you as a backup than actually using 2 computers on stage. This is how I feel about this.
Yeah, as another Helix user, I can also comment on this. The HX Edit software that Markus uses, it's really low weight. All it's doing is actually talking to the hardware. So it will run on the lowliest of laptops or the mightiest of desktops. It's a really minimal program because all it's doing is talking to the Helix and adjusting sounds on the Helix. Helix Native, the plugin, that will require more horsepower. But if you're just looking to control the physical Helix, you can run that on the lowest of laptops.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And even Helix Native doesn't take up much. I have many sessions with a dozen or more Helix Native sessions or plugins on it without moving the meter hardly at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I see that, you know, the interesting thing is like all this automation that is running here, I always assumed that it would take much more processing power, but it doesn't really take much or anything at all. Like you see, like here right now, I mean, this is a current computer, but it's like 30%. Like there's nothing. I could put twice as many plugins into this, and you see, like I'm using mostly the Ableton plugins in here. I mean, I have some others here that I have, yeah, I mean, I'm using the Eventide plugins here, for example. Yeah, I think it's not a question really. It shouldn't stop you from starting to try something like this.
So what's the reason why you don't use the Helix as an interface and you use an additional interface on top?
Because I did not make any good experience, didn't have any good experiences with it. Because it was disconnecting, and it was introducing clicks, and then there's also this strange aspect that the routing of the interface is part of the patch. So that if you're switching patches during a song, then it's a mess, because it basically kind of has to kind of like reload the connection to the laptop. Maybe they've changed that, like, because that was like I'd only tried that when I got the Helix, which was, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I guess. I got one of the very first ones, and maybe they've changed that, but I just didn't like it, and it didn't work. So that's why I still use my trusty little Focusrite 4-channel interface, which gives me all I need.
Markus, do you, all of the sounds that are coming here, are any of them based in a plugin, or is it all just based off of effects, for lack of a better term, instead of like triggering some sort of like orchestral sound? Is it all just effect based?
It's all effect based, and everything. I mean, were you here from the beginning of the session today?
Yes.
Okay, so
well, no, I can't. I'm sorry, I came in about 5 minutes late.
Yeah, so well, that doesn't matter. Like everything, like that I just used to play this piece, where it was just the sound the sounds that we had programmed before, and there's no plugin based sound that is being triggered or anything. It's obviously everything's plugin based or digital treatment based, right? But it's what I've shown you. It's still up here. It's this patch, right? And like as I was playing, I was like maybe muting, some of the effects occasionally. Like I can still play here, and here is the sound that I had at last, and by looping it here using this feedback matrix, which I will explain next time we meet. I will explain it in detail. I'll build it in front of your eyes, so you will really understand it from the ground up. This is where everything gets layered, and it gets layered in an organic way that I have studied for a long, long time. Ever since I started working with delay pedals, I have studied how do things layer up to create orchestral textures, let's say. And so it's, for what I'm doing, it's just a combination of the sounds coming from the Helix, the way that I play the guitar, the notes that I choose, obviously, which is the question that we should get into again at some point also. And then the processing here in the laptop, and my experience with the controls here. So you saw that, I had this screen up. I showed you how I used the reverse, how I used the speed, how I use the feedback, how I use the filter, yeah, and there's much more. Every single parameter can be tweaked live. That's also like what was so amazing about Ableton Live at the beginning, that you know, back then, 20 years ago, it wasn't normal that you didn't have to stop your DAW, to actually make a tweak, right? And nowadays, like everything runs smoothly in the background, and there's no audio, like recorded audio involved at all here, recorded on tracks or anything. It's all just sitting in these two looper plugins here. And the looper plugins, initially, they're empty. There's nothing in there. And then I start recording like the first sample from what comes in here on this channel. And then it gets turned into this big orchestral soundscape.
Fascinating, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, guys, so this was, let me just, stop the screen sharing, and how do I do that? Okay, I guess like this. Okay, so yeah, that was much longer than I expected. I hope you enjoyed this, and it's not easy for me to say, but if you haven't donated anything, please do. I really need it. I want to keep doing this kind of event, and it's kind of, I hope you guys enjoy and you know, can do something with this yourself. Like this is kind of like part of who I am and how I am, that I like to share, and I'm actually taking pleasure from people being creative, you know. And so I have to say goodbye now for today.
Thank you, Markus.
And
thank you. This was really great.
Welcome. You're all on the mailing list, I hope. And
yes,
I'm going to send another email out in a couple of days, or maybe even tomorrow. Let's see.
Yes. All right, man. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Markus.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, everyone.